It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Tuesday, June 25th, your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that is wondering what are the Flyers going to do to make Michkov's transition here a success?
We have all the answers. Well, maybe some.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. You can find me on Twitter at rmiriam. I'm here as always with Russ Cohen, who's on all your favorite social media apps at Sportsology. We are at Locked On Flyers on Instagram, Threads, Blue Sky, and Twitter as well. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. As the playoffs are done, the sports stop sporting like we want them to. But this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a booster bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. You can find our show over on YouTube. We're on the SiriusXM app or anywhere you listen to podcasts. Subscribe to get our latest episode as soon as it's available here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Someone has gotten the Stanley Cup. We are recording before we know the answer to that, but we'll talk about it a little bit.
We'll be smarter about it next show.
Yeah, exactly. So we are continuing, once again, despite it being draft week, to talk a lot about Matvei Michkov because, yeah, you want to, you got to, because it looks like he is going to be headed over here soon. And I think, once you talk about, okay, he's coming, you sort of have to say, now what, right? In terms of how do we make this the best possible scenario for Matvei Michkov on the Flyers? And I think one of the things we have to look to is something we alluded to on yesterday's show with how young he is to come over from the KHL, that there have been some other prospects that have come over and had success here, but they've been much older, right? They've been 24, 25 years old. And, you look at Panarin, who's had incredible success. You look at Kirill Kaprizov, really good success over here, but they came over older. So is there a comparison we can make to a Russian prospect that came over younger?
Younger? No, I mean, long time ago, maybe, but somebody who maybe defected. Peter Nedved was not Russian. He was Czech. Nothing comes to mind in my head. Fetisov, how old was Fetisov when he came over? I think he was older too. But I think Ivan Miroshnichenko, who came over at 20, is a good example. I've read probably 3 or 4 different articles. They're on NHL.com, Hockey News, whatever. First of all, yeah, he wasn't for a while, Fetisov. First of all, it was a situation where they bring him over, and
This is the Caps.
The Caps. They bring him. They put him in Hershey, which I'm always in favor of. We know that's not going to happen with the whole contract thing with Michkov and whatever. He's a better player than Miroshnichenko, but still understand the progression. So they put him in there and he played 40-something games, right? And then they call him up. So then he's hanging out with Uncle Alex Ovechkin, right? And when he got called up, he was using Ovechkin's custom sticks. Then he gets, he's over that summer, he was learning English. He was taking English classes so he could, communicate with Spencer Carberry. So there was that going on. Ovechkin was helping him assimilate into United States life and hockey life, at the same time. And so, there's all these different things, all these different moving parts. It's not just, and somebody might say, oh, his English is fine. It's fine to a degree. It's probably not fine to the degree where all of a sudden you have to communicate with all your teammates and know exactly what's going on. So just having another Russian doesn't do it. You almost need a Russian who is more of a seasoned veteran or did it himself, but you may not be able to find that. So then another veteran is a good thing. Yes, he could work and hang with the Russians, but he's going to need some veteran to walk him through this. Maybe it'll be Couturier, but somebody's going to have to do it.
Yeah, I think it's gonna be important for him to get the best mentorship possible, and I think you're right, it has to come from a combination of Russians, in terms of the language barrier and the right kind of player who sets the right kind of example in terms of work ethic, in terms of communication with coaches and all of that. Now, I do worry a little bit about other Russians in the organization, like Zamula, for instance, having to shoulder the burden of being a translator because that's not their job. Their job is
Right.
hockey player. And of course, like you want to be a good teammate and everything, and you're going to be there for them, but that's not your primary job. And with a guy like Michkov, you need somebody who's going to support him like to a greater degree, who's frankly not on the ice, or you have a player development coach who speaks Russian
Yeah.
brought
Yeah.
into the
Yeah.
organization, just because, again, I just don't want to see other players who have other jobs to do being like burdened with this unnecessarily or unfairly.
Yeah. No question. I mean, again, there have been guys like Nikita Filatov, highly drafted Russian for Columbus, just could never get it together. I'm not sure how they did it or tried it back then, but they probably tried to put him in the league too soon, and they probably didn't have a lot, to really help him out when he was in the minors and eventually with Columbus. And so, he may be the youngest guy because he may have come over right after the draft. So, but again, that's not the formula you want. The formula you want is talk to I literally, if I were Danny Briere, I would speak to somebody over at the Capitals and say, "Hey, how did you do this? I'd like to take some pointers." And I'm sure they would help him with that. And that's what I would do, because I wouldn't try and presume to try and come up with my own plan and just think that's going to work. Because at least Miroshnichenko, like, he didn't have a career year or anything. He had a modest year, but he got through the season.
Yeah.
And that's what you want. And so, like, yeah, I would be reaching out to other organizations to kind of get their cue on this.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think that it's okay if they bring the Players Association into this and get him paired up with maybe Panarin or Kaprizov, honestly, just to have that sort of support from the other side of things and just somebody to
Right.
talk to who's gone through this. I think that's going to be really important, um, as he goes through the season. We talk about Lehigh Valley, and Miroshnichenko played at Hershey a lot and got some really good, valuable experience there. The expectations for Michkov are a lot different in terms
Yes.
of, would you put Michkov in Lehigh Valley and is it worth it, given his skill set? And
Okay. If people are not going to like this, but I would do exactly what the Capitals did if I was able to, and I wasn't bound by a contract, and I would have somebody with him, and I would make sure that he gets 30 games or so down there and just used to living in the US without having to deal with the stress of the NHL too. I would do it. But I don't think that the Flyers have that chance to do it, because I don't think that's possible based on the circumstances. So now they have to do it a different way.
right. And I think my only hesitation with agreeing with you, because I think in theory, from a transition from a life experience perspective and just getting acclimated perspective, I think you're right. And I think from a hockey perspective too, to be a little further out of the spotlight when you're getting your legs set, and just figuring dimensions out, figuring speed out, all of that stuff. My only hesitation is, are there players on the Phantoms roster that you think you could put on a line with him that will provide him the on ice support and on ice skill level in order to do it? I think it's possible, but difficult.
It's
And
close, but I don't think he would outgrow them like the first week. So I think it would be a help for a little while.
Yeah, I think there's a very limited time frame that it would
Right.
be useful, in my opinion. Because
And they
I
had
was trying to
tons of
think.
vets there, so that part, they could see
Yeah,
how the vets go to the rink every day. The schedule's not as demanding as the NHL right away. Like it would help them ease in.
right. And that's where I feel like you can't really give him a center, even though you might want to like put him on a line with Abels, right? I
Right.
don't think you can because Abels is also adjusting to the
Correct.
organization and
No, you
coming
can't
back
use him.
over.
No.
So I feel like it's more like a Rhett Gardner kind of
It
situation.
is. And that would probably be okay for a little while.
Yeah, so I think that, and then maybe you could put Rizzo on the other side
Yeah.
of him, and I
Something like
think that's a
that.
good start. I think Samu Tuamala has the right speed, but they play the same side, so I don't
Right.
think
They can't do
that's
that.
they can't do that. So that's like kind of where I am having this question of
Sure,
like,
no, I get it, but this is just a
what do you
temporary
do?
thing. Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
temporary thing. I think it would work out temporarily. And then, he would tell the team, I feel good now. Okay.
yeah,
Well, now you'll get the call up. I think
yeah.
that would be great. But, life doesn't always work out that way.
All right. So we talked a little bit yesterday about goals and expectations for him. We're going to
Mhm.
dig into that a little bit more and then talk about the center situation. We will get to all that coming up next.
I love sports. I love them so much I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games, and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. I still keep with the Phillies over the Tigers. I take that every day. So head over to fanduel.com/locked on and start making the most of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball.
We will be answering your mailbag questions on tomorrow's show, amongst everything. So get those in. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, send us a message on Twitter, or comment on our YouTube channel. So looking at Matvei Michkov and specific goals and expectations, I think the most important goal here or expectation to set is games played in the NHL because I
Mhm.
think looking at stats is going to be a little fraught, and depending on how things go. But if you say, okay, we want them to play 50 NHL games this season,
Right.
I think as a random but not so random number, I think that is where you start, right, with games played.
Yeah. I think, look, put him in all the home preseason games. That's fine. Let him get a feel for that.
Yep.
Maybe one of the away games. He doesn't have to play every game. And then, yeah, if you want to play him five, sit him for one, play him five, sit him for one, so he can kind of, get the feel of things. That's fine too. I think if they explain it to him, and this is again, Rachel, where I worry about John, if you explain it to him and it's say, hey, this is how we kind of want to break you into this league. And if you go gangbusters, hey, you know, you get all the playing time you want. Don't worry about it. But this is how we want to kind of break you into the league. I don't know if John's going to set a plan like that in motion, but I feel like they should.
Yeah, I mean, he's more of a streaky guy, right? You play well, you play. If you don't
Right.
play well, you sit. It's not like a 4 on 1 off, 4 on he's
Right.
not that guy. And frankly, I think a lot of athletes, like, may or may not respond to that. Is Mitchkoff the kinda guy that would respond to that if he knows it in advance? I
Well,
think
this is to
or
prevent
there's
him from hitting the wall flat.
Yeah.
In a
No,
worst case scenario.
absolutely.
Like, you don't want that to
Absolutely.
happen. You're hoping that he has a great season and can win a Calder, but there's also that chance that he struggles, and so you're trying to mitigate that.
Listen, I get it. I just
Yeah,
don't know
yeah.
what kinda guy he is in terms of, is that something that will help him, or is it something if him not playing, is that going to throw him off in terms of
Well, I
his
don't
consistency?
I don't think it'll throw him off. I mean, look, last year he didn't play 82 games, he played, like, 47.
Right.
So, he's not used to 82
Well,
games. That's another
that's why I
factor.
said 50 games,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
you
no, but
know?
I mean, that's another thing, right? Now you're asking him to get used to that, travel in the NHL the way they travel. You kind of have to, let him get the feel for that. Now, listen, again, if it's automatic and he's, top 10 in scoring in, 20 games, great. But in all
Change things up.
likelihood, right, in all likelihood, it's not. So if you just explain to him, hey, if we see you struggling out there, we're going to pull you for a game. We're going to talk to you about it, let you watch a game or two, and then put you back in. Don't worry, you will get plenty of time this year with the club.
Yeah, I think so, and when I say 50 games, that's NHL games, it's not total games, right? Because
Right.
if he plays, like, 20 games in Lehigh Valley,
Right, right. No,
I
just in the
think
NHL.
just in the NHL. So, I think that helps,
Lehigh's
simulate
easier.
a
Lehigh's
full
easier.
season, though. It
Yeah.
helps ramp him up in the first year in terms of being able to play a full 82. I think
Yeah.
that is important. But, yeah, I think as long as he knows what's happening and that getting sat isn't a punishment, and that's where the problem is, right?
Mhm.
Is that that's how Torts uses people getting sat. It's a
Well, that's a
punishment.
whole different thing. Hopefully, somebody over there has explained, um, the story of John Tortorella to him, so he understands what kind of coach he has coming in. Because everything's gonna be perfect at
Yeah.
the beginning. "Oh, yeah, yeah," but
Well,
we
look,
also know in the heat of when everything's going on how things might change.
right, and so I think the other thing we gotta look at is time on ice and situational usage, right?
Right.
It's not just how many games, it's how much is he playing, and, if you look at getting him 15 minutes to start off with, I think that's good, and then you kind of adjust from there, and getting him some special teams use, putting him out there on the power play, seeing how he does. I think all of that rolls into this, right? Getting him experience in different forms of play.
Yeah, you're not gonna put him out for a lot of defensive zone starts. You're
Nope.
you're gonna give him 12, 13 minutes, maybe 2.5 on the power play. He might not be on power play 1. He might be the guy that gets power play 2 off the ground for this team or any power play off the ground for this team.
Gosh,
But he can't
a
start.
girl can dream, right?
Yeah, yeah. But I don't know if you could start him on power play 1. He's gonna have to earn that. Like,
No.
John doesn't
Yeah.
usually just give that away. So I think he's gonna find out that the whole job is merit based on the coach.
Yeah, and I think that's good in a lot
Mhm.
of ways.
No, there's good
I
things about that.
Yeah, I think so. I think it gives him, things to strive for, which is important for any player on the
Yes.
team, and that everybody knows they've got to earn their ice time, and everybody's in it together, and he's no different than
Should
anyone
also
else on
there
the
should
team.
always be a carrot kinda situation there.
Yeah. Yeah, I think so. So I think that's really what we're looking at. And you know, alluded to maybe some points yesterday, but I don't want to go there now. I think just looking at games played and ice time and what kind of ice time is where you start.
Right. And then, they have to decide the Flyers, again, they've had this situation before, whether they want an interpreter there or they're gonna let someone in the team handle it, you know, a player. So that's you gotta figure that one out. Because again, his English might be okay, but I don't think he's gonna be out in press conferences speaking a lot of English right away.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll see though. Maybe he's better. We don't know. That's the whole thing. There's a lot we don't know because we haven't seen him in a year and a half or whatever.
So, as part of all this, we've also been talking about who to play him with at center and what does it mean for the center position overall. We've said Morgan Frost of all the existing centers, it makes the most sense. And I think that's pretty much across the board. People agree.
Yeah.
Some people say Couturier because he could show him the ropes defensively, but I feel like he could do that in practice without
He could
actually being,
definitely do that in practice. Yeah, that's what we were
yeah,
kind of getting at. Yes.
yeah, where he doesn't have to be on the same line as him to have that
Right.
same effect. So,
Right.
So that's kind of where I've landed on that. But I think if you lock in Frost to playing on a line with Michkov, then what else do you do for the rest of the team? And like how when you need to switch things out because you inevitably have to do that to mix things up.
Well, that's why I think you made sense when you said make it the third line to start. I think Frost would get it. Like he's not going to be mad. And even if it's Lawton, that's the other guy on that line, let's say, that's fine.
Yeah.
That's Lawton's the veteran. Frost is kind of like the up and comer, but has those skills and that extra little something, something, and then you got the kid. That's not a bad way to do it, to kind of start it off. Because the way it starts and the way it goes like mid-season is going to be different. We know that.
Right, but I think we all agree that we need a center more long term than that
Yes.
for the future. So that's kind of the issue now. So like, how do we get there? Which is our weekly poll question, by the way. If you haven't
By the
answered it
way,
yet, link to it in the show notes, and it's over on our YouTube channel. Of do we try and get that center this off season, and how do we draft somebody? Do we trade? Like, what's going on here? So uh, where does this net out for you?
I think where it nets out for me is they draft in the same spot. You take the chance that Hellenius falls. If he falls, hey, that solves my problem. If not, there's still plenty of other needs on this team, right? But even if they trade up, like let's say they give away the 32nd pick and a second to trade up, yeah, then maybe you could be a little more cavalier. I don't think they'd be able to do that. So let's say it's probably the 12th pick and a second is more like it. Sometimes I have to formulate these things in my head. But let's say they give up the 12th pick and let's say Columbus gives them that second and they dish that off, right? To move up. That's great. You might get a center that you want there, but then you have to hope that center makes it in the next 2 years. That's still like there's a lot of hoping there. So I still want to use the draft to fill the needs of the organization. And I'm going to try and solve the problem within. But if there's something out there where I can get a center and not Trevor Zegras, listen, you could do all the I want skill guys on this team that you want, but you can't put Zegras on a Tortorella team and have Michkov there too, and trying to rein them both in for defense. It's not going to be the way you want to operate. So forget Trevor Zegras. Get him out of your mind. But there may be somebody else, and that's possible depending on what the cost is.
Yeah, so we're going to get more into the potential costs and other machinations in order to get there coming up next. All right, so you've talked about some trades to try and get us a center to help support the team overall and Michkov more long term. We talked about trades related to the draft picks for this year. We could just do trades like outside of the draft picks for this year. We could
That's what I
talk
mean.
about,
Yeah, you could just do that.
using players that we have or picks down the road.
Hmm.
I think, we've got 2 firsts next year, and for the right center, maybe you think about trading that Avs pick, right?
Yeah, I mean, well, because the Abs pick still even then is going to be in the high 20s, right? So that's still a good inducement, but not enough. You still got to give up a good player. But someone's going to be like, well, what about Farabee in the first? Yeah, Farabee in the first will get you a certain amount. Um, Farabee in the first isn't getting you a top line center though, or someone who could possibly play top line center, who has who's not like 33 or 34 or 35. That's the only thing. I know he has worth. Everybody does, but the problem is that you're trying to again and again, if you're trading someone with like a year left under the contract or 2 years left under the contract, that mitigates the deal too. So that's a tough part of it, when you look at that. But I did notice, and I don't think they're going to do this, but for the highest possible value, you'd have to admit Travis Konechny would be the guy, and he does have a $3 million bonus coming to him. If that bonus comes over the summer, and the Flyers pay it, then that's a lot less money that someone has to pay Travis Konechny this year if they think they're a cup team, whatever. Now, if you give that team, you know, Konechny a first and a second, let's say, then you might
Uh-huh.
actually get something out of it but it's only going to be to like a cup team. Other teams are going to want cost certainty with Konechny beyond this year.
Right. And so all of this gets me to I it just feels like we need to get that center through the draft. because it just feels like developing a center from within at the same time as you're developing Michkov, I think just makes more sense from a building the team together and having these guys grow together and become teammates together.
Yeah.
um Makes more sense. I do understand. I feel like the mentorship part of it can come elsewhere. I just feel like getting a good pairing together when you do it through the draft makes more sense overall. And thinking about all these big trades you would have to do and give up what you would have to give up to get there makes me more hesitant to go that way. That being said, I'm sure there's the right deal out there that I'd be like, "Oh yeah, that makes sense." You
Yeah,
know?
and I
I
don't,
just
and I do want to say this too. I don't think it's a good idea, like for people that want to trade up and get Demidov with that pick, because then you've got two young Russians in the league, and yes, while they could converse or whatever, now you got to teach both of them how to play in the NHL, and I think it compounds, that part of it, and I think that's a lot to ask, don't you?
yeah, I do. I do. So, there's pros and cons to
Yeah,
both ways of approaching it, but I think, if you're looking to trade now to get that right center, you run into the cap issues we've been talking about, right?
right. Yes. So the cap issue. So there's still Risto. You don't know what's going to happen with him. Uh, Now everybody's right when they say teams want to see him play, sure, but there's always an inducement you could do to just trade him if he's healthy. You maybe have to eat half his contract for 2 of the years and trade him a second round pick. I know it's Chuck Fletcher like, but you're in a spot, so that may be a way to take Risto off the team and get cap space. But if that's not the case, then you could do an inducement for Delorier and try and give like a third to somebody and see if they would take Delorier and the rest of his contract for this year and next year. If not, like we talked about last show, we could buy out. You could buy out Delorier. That's the team always has that option. Uh, the option of trading Lawton because he's got 2 more years at 3. That clears up 3 right away. And then the Ryan Johansson conundrum. I think everybody just, has this thing like, hey, it'll work out. And it might, but we don't know that. And they might not know that. You don't know exactly what's going to go on with that. Danny has not been very clear about what their plan is about that either, because he probably doesn't know either. And so that could drag on a little bit. And that's where the summer cap and all that sort of runs into it. Now, what if he's healthy? I mean, he is the center. Like,
You're
that's the
right.
crazy. Like, you do have to wonder.
Yeah, and we just, don't know, right?
Right,
What his even if he's healthy, who is he at this point?
right, right.
No idea. Absolutely no
And we
idea.
haven't even brought up Cam Atkinson, who we saw
Well,
that is
we
probably
know.
reluctant in getting dealt somewhere. And we don't think they're going to buy him out, right? I don't think John's going to do it to him. So that's, you got to just deal with Cam too. Cam is going to be a good guy to have around,
Yeah.
to have around Michkov, but Cam can't really hang with Michkov. Maybe for like 25 games he could, but
Well,
after
maybe
that,
on that second power play unit, to be honest.
yes, that's fine. Yeah, I mean, but again, then you got to hope Michkov's really, really setting the world on fire, because Cam's not setting the world on fire, unfortunately, on the power play. But you could do it for a little while. So yeah, these are all intriguing things that have to get figured out. And like, to me, I know the plan was sort of like next year you got to clear out this cap space because Michkov's coming next year. Well, he's here now, and I feel like you got to start clearing some of that cap trouble out now.
That's where ultimately, I guess, talking about this, trying to solve that center problem to play with Mitchkoff, there's a lot of factors to it. There's the on ice chemistry, there's the skill balance, there's the mentoring ability, but then there's frankly the practical side of the money that we're talking about right
Right.
now is trying to get that center now has financial implications, and the Flyers would have to do a little bit of juggling around. We know there's the summer cap overage and that the Ellis contract will go off the cap and all of that, but it still keeps a tight cap situation for the Flyers. And I think that's just something to take into consideration is, do you put off getting that specific center one more year until there's more space, and there's merit to that argument.
There is merit to that argument. I know everybody's going to want everything now. Um, maybe it happens at the trade deadline too. I mean,
Yep. Oh yeah.
you can wait until then, but you have this kid Morgan Frost, he's not a kid anymore, and he has talent. And to me, it's not a bad way to sort of set this up and let them, try and get them to be a cohesive unit and put whoever else you want on that line. But that would be a pretty talented duo.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's absolutely worth giving a shot to start off with, and then go from there. But there'll be a lot more time to think about this and ponder the situation. And as we get closer to when they actually sign him, because they have not done that yet. But we will continue to do so on tomorrow's show. However, we will be talking Hockey Hall of Fame. They're making their announcements, so we'll talk about the class. We
Yep.
will talk about the Stanley Cup and how everything came out, and answer your mailbag questions. So make sure you get those in as we get closer to the draft. This is the last mailbag before the draft. Let us know on Twitter at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail, or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology, SPORTSOLOGY.
Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube that's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. Have a great day, everyone.